We finally have an idea as to why the Mariners and Red Sox trade talks about Luis Castillo and Triston Casas fell apart. Now, this has been a whole saga. First, it was that the Mariners weren't interested in Triston Casas because they thought he fits better in Boston or whatever. But as it turns out, and this is coming in an article from Mark Feinsand, and there's one specific blurb that is making its way around Twitter right now. It says this: Boston remained in the market for another starter, with Seattle's Luis Castillo among its targets, but according to sources, the Mariners wanted Triston Casas back in a trade. Interesting to note, because we were originally told they didn't want Triston Casas in the trade, something the Red Sox were unwilling to do unless Seattle took back Masataka Yoshida, who has 3 years and $55.8 million remaining on his contract. Now, we've talked about adding Masataka Yoshida before. He's an outfielder, but basically just a DH because he's horrible defensively in the outfield, and because of that and the money that he is owed, it makes trading for Triston Casas while also taking on Yoshida a very, very different deal. Originally, if it was just Triston Casas for Luis Castillo, the Mariners would be saving that entire salary of Luis Castillo, the 22 or whatever $million he is owed, and they could use that money to then go out there and add to this rotation to replace Luis Castillo, and then B, go out there and add players at second base, first base, third base, depending on what they want to do, and add to the bullpen. But if you're taking back Masataka Yoshida in that deal, he's making about $18.5 million each year for the next 3 years. That eats into that budget and leaves you with only about $4 million saved on your payroll table there. And because of that, the Mariners said no. So what the Mariners want is to get better from this trade by being able to get a position player that fills a need for them. They want to save all or most of Castillo's contract. And it's just something that I don't know if it's going to be viable, because I don't know if there's going to be a team that's going to be willing to take on that entire contract while also giving up a big piece when there are other pitchers still on the board to go out and be signed, like, again, Corbin Burnes. Let's look at Masataka Yoshida and see if he's really that bad that the Mariners wouldn't want to take on that contract, and then go from there. Yoshida is going to be 31 in 2025, and as you can see here, he's put up identical 1.4 WAR years with Boston in his 2 years in the big leagues. He hit 280, 349, 415 with a 112 OPS plus with 10 home runs, 56 RBI, 52 strikeouts to 27 walks in 2024. Now that put his strikeout rate at 12.4%, and while he wasn't walking a lot, about 6.4%, he also didn't hit the ball all that hard, a little bit below league average in 2024. Masataka Yoshida is a fine player, but when you don't get the defense out of him, and he would just be a DH for you, that really muddies things up for the Mariners. But before we talk about a fit for Yoshida here, you can see by his Baseball Savant page that, yeah, he limits strikeouts, he doesn't swing and miss all that much, and the little bit of power that he does have is to right field, which fits the Mariners ballpark pretty well. Makes sense for another lefty bat in Yoshida that way. But overall, he's going to be a DH for you that doesn't have a lot of power. And once again, Yoshida is making $18.5 million for the next 3 years through his age 33 season. That's a pretty good chunk of change for the Seattle Mariners moving forward when they already have guys like Mitch Haniger and Mitch Garver on this team. Now, a couple things to note here is that Mitch Haniger and Mitch Garver probably won't be on this team past 2025, hopefully not even into the season. And I think that when it comes to adding Masataka Yoshida, he's not going to play for you in the outfield, so he'd probably have to be a DH for you. But if you get Triston Casas in that deal, then what do you do with Luke Raley? He's just going to be screwed out of playing time in that scenario because Casas will be your everyday first baseman. The outfield spots are already filled. What do you do with Luke Raley in that scenario? And potentially, you could just move him throughout the 3 outfield spots as more like almost like a utility guy, a guy who's getting, 4 or 5 starts a week, just depending on where you're putting him in the outfield or even over at first base to give Casas a day off. But with Mitch Garver as your DH already, probably, and Mitch Haniger also better suited as a DH, you could not add another DH-only type bat like Masataka Yoshida to your lineup. It just doesn't make sense. And hey, this very cool sweatshirt right here, it's a short sleeve sweatshirt that I love so much, is available on Fanatics.com for half off right now. Be sure you guys click the link in the description down below. Get yourselves one of these. We've already had 7 people make orders from us making these Fanatics affiliate link mentions. I really, really want to see how far we can take it in 2025, so I appreciate it if you guys do go ahead and click on that and make a purchase. You help us in the process, and you get some cool Mariners garb. I appreciate it. So in the scenario where you're adding Masataka Yoshida, it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for the Mariners to only trade Castillo in that deal. Now, with that being said, if you were to trade for Masataka Yoshida and he'd be kind of your everyday DH, or maybe you put him in the outfield once in a while, but I highly don't recommend it because he sucks out there, then maybe you're able to send someone like Mitch Garver or someone back to the Red Sox so that you open up that spot a little bit. It still kind of screws Luke Raley out of a position, but if you do send Mitch Garver in return back to Boston, so it's Luis Castillo and Mitch Garver for Masataka Yoshida and Triston Casas, then maybe the money you're saving in payroll there is worth it. You're saving $12 million from Mitch Garver's contract, so you're basically doubling the money that you had going into 2025 from $16 million to $32 million. Now you have that $32 million to go out there and address what is happening in your rotation where you're now missing a guy of your core five. You still have a little bit of money to go out and address one other spot, hopefully, if not both, of third base and second base. And you added Masataka Yoshida, who's not a terrible bat. I mean, having him hit in like the 7 or 8 spot, I think is completely fine. And in the end, the Mariners just need to add offense. I don't care how you do it. And if that means going out and adding Masataka Yoshida, then so be it. You need to add offense, and he would definitely be an upgrade over what you saw out of the DH position in 2024. And because of that, I don't hate the idea, but I think that for the Mariners, this is something they'd be waiting to see if they get Roki Sasaki. Because if they're able to acquire Roki Sasaki, maybe they're a little bit more okay with not saving as much money on a Luis Castillo deal, because if they get Roki Sasaki, they don't need to go out there and then fill Luis Castillo's spot with another expensive veteran when they added a guy for the league minimum in Roki. And so that is something I think the Mariners truly are waiting for, is that January 15th signing period for Roki Sasaki before they make any real big moves. That's the only thing that makes sense to me, because of course we know that spring training starts in less than 2 months now, and if the Mariners were to go out there and get Sasaki, they might feel better about trading Castillo. I think that for the Mariners, they need to go out there and make this offense better one way or another. And if it means taking on Masataka Yoshida in a deal where you are also getting Triston Casas, but you're losing Luis Castillo, I think that you can make it work for a year while Mitch Garver and Mitch Haniger are still under contract. Once they're gone, basically, Masataka Yoshida's contract is a little bit more expensive, but basically the same as Mitch Haniger's, and he's a better player, at least right now, than Haniger is. And so I feel like you can probably get by with that. Again, what do you do with Luke Raley, though, who is still in like ARB 1 or something like that, who's not going to be making a ton of money, or maybe he's still pre-ARB, something like that. Anyway, he's not going to be making a ton of money and is probably a better player than Masataka Yoshida. I think that there is a chance that we do see Victor Robles regress this year, and you could put Luke Raley out there in right field. I think that's certainly an option. Of course, if somebody gets hurt, Luke Raley immediately fills in the outfield, and that's what you do there. And so there will still be plenty of playing time for Luke Raley, but if you were to acquire Yoshida, it makes it really hard when you already have Haniger and Garver on this roster, because they all fill a very similar role. So for the Mariners, if they're able to dump one of Haniger or Garver in this trade as well, I think that's a trade that you need to go out and do. I think it makes a whole lot of sense. With that being said, the easiest way to fix this is to just have more money to spend. Just have an owner who is willing to pitch you a little bit more money to make this team better, instead of having to work with these stupid limitations. Or the only reason the Mariners would be okay with trading Castillo is because they're getting his salary off the books and they don't want to take salary in return. A good ownership group, a well-run baseball team is like, yeah, okay. I honestly think a well-run baseball team makes this move. I do. I think a well-run baseball team that is not afraid to spend money makes this move 10 times over. And I think that when you're getting Triston Casas in return, who I don't think is the greatest fit for T-Mobile Park, but you're also getting Masataka Yoshida, who has been a decent contributor over the past couple years, a good baseball team makes this move. And unfortunately for us, the Seattle Mariners are run by a bunch of buffoons in the ownership group. And because of that, we're going to have to wait and see what that means with Roki Sasaki in the near future. I appreciate you guys watching this one. YouTube thinks that you want to watch this one that's on the screen now. Watch that one next. Appreciate you guys, and go Mariners.